Hi, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of What Women Want. Hi, Apurva.
Hi, hi.
Hi.
Hi, Rajiv. How are
Hi.
you?
So, good. So, before you came in, I had just about started talking as to welcoming everyone for another edition of What Women Want. That's a series of Instagram lives that Dr. Purva and myself we've started to address all the aspects of women's health. We've done one on PCOS and menstrual hygiene, etc. We've had a bit of a hiatus for too long in between because of work commitment from either of us. But we're back again, and today we have another one on breast cancer awareness, breast lumps, and everything related to all the thoughts and questions that women have about breast lumps and breast care. And we're going to be welcoming Dr. Karishma Kriti. We're just waiting for her to join in. Dr. Apurva, would you like to just introduce yourself in the meantime?
Hi, everyone. I am Dr. Apurva Pallam Reddy from Bangalore. I'm a consulting gynecologist as well. I'm not a podcast artist, but I am a cosmetic gynecologist like Dr. Rajiv. And yeah, these are certain sessions that we really look forward to because it's a lot of fun interaction as well. And of course, the main aim of doing these series is to make sure that everyone gets the right information from doctors, and we give you authentic information. We know that there is a lot of information available everywhere, but just to make sure that we give you the right information so that you can take proper steps towards a better health.
Yeah, and I'm Dr. Rajiv Agarwal. I'm a gynecologist from Kolkata. I'm a gynecologist, fertility expert, aesthetic gynecologist or cosmetic gynecologist like Dr. Apurva. And of course, I do a bit of podcast as well. So I do call myself a podcast artist.
So Shubhika has already asked a question: how often should one do a breast examination? Could you please describe what these lumps feel like? Excellent question, Shubhika. We do have that point to be discussed, and that's the reason why we have Dr. Karishma over. She is the expert with respect to breast care. So once she comes in,
Yeah, Dr.
yay!
Karishma is here. Yay! Okay. Thank you, Dr. Karishma.
Awesome.
And just to introduce Dr. Karishma, she's a specialist surgeon treating not only breast cancers, but also benign breast diseases, that is non-cancerous, any lumps, etc., that there might be. She has received her oncology training, that is cancer treatment training from Tata Memorial Hospital. We all know about Tata Memorial Hospital, Mumbai. It's the mecca of cancer anywhere in India, where she has worked in the breast unit for 5 years under the aegis of the topmost cancer specialists. And she's got multiple chapters and research publications. She's absolutely accomplished, and we are honored to have Dr. Karishma here with us. Thank you, Dr. Karishma.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here. I really enjoy spreading breast awareness in the country, and it's like one of my passion projects. So I'm extremely happy and privileged to be here.
Fantastic, thank you. So without wasting much more time, because we've gotten some time wasted because of all the joining and some technical glitches. So when we hear of breast lumps, the first thing we think of is cancer. So Dr. Karishma, how true is that?
So breast cancer, of course, is one of the diagnoses that you can have with a breast lump, but be assured that 8 out of 10 lumps, which is most of the lumps, are not breast cancer. Breast cancer diagnosis is based on many factors, including age, your gender, your other risk factors, and that has to be taken into consideration when one is making a diagnosis of breast cancer. So if you have a breast lump, most likely it is not breast cancer, but have it checked out.
I think that's a very important message to go out there to people, that all of it is not cancer. Dr. Apurva.
Sure. I think the concern these days is, Karishma, that most of the girls, they come to us and they present, I think I have cancer. That's how they say. They don't say that, I have a breast lump. They say that, okay, they've already Googled and done their research, and, they have already made the diagnosis in their mind. Now, having said that, the first question, what I would want to tell you is, when someone does detect a lump, whom should they come down to? Should they be coming to their regular physician, gynecologist, or a breast surgeon? Whom should they be coming to? And when younger women experience lumps, apart from cancer, what is it that they should consider?
So, two things. Whom should a person with a breast symptom approach? I think any healthcare practitioner, be it a GP or a gynecologist, surgeon, should be well versed with not just cancer, but how to also diagnose benign diseases. So that is on the part of the doctor, I would say. But
Sure.
I think women in general are more comfortable with their gynacs to go with their, more personal symptoms. So they should go to whomever they're most comfortable with. They should be able to give the proper history and be comfortable and calm during examination. And of course, that person should be well versed with breast symptoms and breast examination. And the second you asked me was younger women and breast lumps, right? So
Lumps.
so age is one of the most important factors when it comes to breast cancer, and the incidence of breast cancer increases with increasing age till it plateaus after menopause. So less than 30 years of age, it is extremely unlikely. I think about 0.3 to less than 1% of cancers occur in women less than 30 years of age. And younger women are more likely to have benign diseases like fibrocystic change and fibroadenoma. And these are hormone related changes and also affected by the time in your menstrual cycle. So women may say that they notice a lump which increases and decreases, disappears, associated with pain, associated with their other premenstrual symptoms. And that is an important way in which it can be distinguished from other more suspicious lumps.
And if you say that someone younger has presented to a general practitioner, or let us say a gynecologist for us, how should we investigate it? Is just an examination and ruling out symptoms good enough, or should we go ahead and get any investigations done?
So when a younger person or any person presents with a breast lump, I think most important is, of course, get an appropriate history, how fast it is growing, whether it's been stable for many, many years. So that tells you that it may be a benign disease. If a person has been carrying the same lump for the past 5 years and it's not grown in size. The other thing is examine the patient. When you examine the patient, a hard, immobile lump is more likely to be malignant rather than a soft and mobile lump. And if in doubt, always get at least an ultrasound for a woman 30 years of age. And on the ultrasound, we get BIRADS score, which tells us what is the likelihood of malignancy. So anything that's BIRADS 1 and 2, we can watch. Anything that's BIRADS 3 and 5, we can either follow up. 4, 5 BIRADS should always be biopsied. The other thing I wanted to say was that any lesions, even a fibroadenoma, which is more than 2.5 to 3 centimeters, it's better to do a biopsy because it may not be a breast cancer, but we always need to rule out a Phyllodes tumor, which needs to be dealt with and managed differently than a fibroadenoma.
So you would say that's probably smaller lumps that are present can, we can wait and watch, but anything that is more than, 2.5 centimeters, irrespective of the symptoms that they're having, it's better to kind of get it operated and removed.
Yes, obviously. And if it is a stable, long-standing lump, then also we could watch it. And there are also some hormonal treatment that is now being used, like omeloxifene, for fibroadenoma, and that has also shown some benefit. So that can be considered if a patient is not planning pregnancy, is not breastfeeding or pregnant.
Great.
Right. So, we were talking about fibroadenoma, and for those who are listening, of course, we're going to be coming to the breast self-examination, etc. I think Apurva would be taking it a little later. But, it's called the mouse of the breast because of the way it slips under the finger. And you also mentioned that some women have pain during the menstrual cycle in their breasts. So my point to you is that a normal phenomenon to happen, or is it necessarily a fibroadenosis? Because some women may just have mastalgia during periods. How do we differentiate that from a fibroadenosis? And, from the gynecological perspective, sometimes we have these conditions called endometriosis as well. So sometimes in endometriosis also women present like this. Is there a way of differentiating between these conditions? 1. 2, we normally talk about giving evening primrose oil and these various combinations. Do they really work in these conditions, vitamin E and all these kind of natural ingredients that we keep talking about or are being sold in the market?
Well, so there have actually been studies. However, there have been smaller studies that have shown some benefit of evening primrose oil and even vitamin E. But to what extent it is placebo effect and to what extent there is an actual benefit is not really known. I would say this for evening primrose oil is that it balances the fat ratio in the breast, and that is supposed to be the mechanism of action, where it makes the breast less responsive or more immune to the hormonal changes, and that is supposed to be the mechanism of action for evening primrose oil. So I use evening primrose oil, and you give it for long term, at least 6 weeks or more, and the breast fats, they balance, and a lot of women have reported good results for mastalgia, at least cyclical mastalgia, with evening primrose oil. Sorry.
Fibroadenosis is what I was asking about otherwise.
Yeah, so I think mastalgia related to either premenstrual symptom or fibroadenosis, the treatment pretty much remains the same as long as you rule out anything that has to be treated, say, surgically or with more medical. The treatment for fibroadenosis or even for mastalgia is mainly supportive or with these plant derivatives, at the most amoxicillin. So as long as you rule out anything more malignant, the treatment remains supportive. And well, yeah.
Yeah, but then the point is, it's not something scary, because a lot of women just come so scared that I'm having pain in my breast during my periods, and they're very, very scared about it. So at least that part we can reassure them.
Yeah. So almost 70 to 80% of women will have breast pain at some point of time in their lives. And cyclical mastalgia is extremely common, and it is very innocuous. Like, it's nothing to worry about. But it also doesn't mean that you have to suffer with it. If you're having a lot of pain, if it's unbearable, if it's affecting your daily life, then there is treatment for it. I think those are the two important points. Nothing to worry about. There is symptomatic treatment. So please approach a doctor and start your treatment, and you might find relief.
Right. Apurva, you want to take
So
the next one?
on that, yeah, on that note, I think self-breast examination fortunately has, the awareness for it is increasing, and more and more women are trying to perform it. Of course, there is two ways to it, because they do it the wrong way, and they are concerned about something which is actually a healthy tissue, and then they again go back into the same loop of being concerned with respect to risk factors. So when should women actually start doing a self-breast examination? I mean, I know it's a long process, but can we have any videos over what is the best process, best time, and where do we as doctors even come in, for a self-breast examination?
Yeah. So when we talk about breast cancer, we talk about an average risk woman and a high risk woman. So I will start with an average risk woman. That is almost everybody, unless they have a very strong family history or a known gene mutation with the propensity of developing breast cancer. So in general, breast awareness or understanding your breast should start at the age of 20 to 25, and self-breast examination should be started at the age of 30 years. And the most important thing with self-breast examination is consistency and knowledge. You should know exactly how to do it, and you should do it month after month, even if you don't find anything. I mean, that is the point. If you don't find anything, great. And if you find something in the first examination, you should take it with a pinch of salt and see if it's the same or if it's just the way your breast is, because everyone doesn't have the same breast. Women in general normally have some lumpiness in certain areas, especially in the lower quadrants. Do you want me to talk about how to do a self-breast examination?
Yes, please.
Yes.
So for
if we can have an overview about it, and probably we can always share a link for a video wherein because I think it's going to be more descriptive.
Yes. So I will do it as succinctly as possible. So first of all, breast self-examination should be done after the age of 30 years. If you're a premenopausal woman having periods every month, you should do it on between day 7 and day 10 of your period, starting from the first day of your period. And if you're a postmenopausal woman and not having periods, or pregnant and or have lactational amenorrhea, then you just pick any date. I mean, I always say just pick your birth date and give it as your monthly birthday present. Do a self breast examination, and you start with learning. So you should know what the symptoms are. You're looking for a lump. You're looking for any gross asymmetry, anything new, any nipple discharge, any crusting, any skin pulling in or nipple pulling in. So overall, these are the few symptoms that you're looking for. And you take off your top and you stand in front of the mirror with your arms by the side, and always compare both the breasts. See if there is any swelling that you can see. Put your arms on the side and then put your arms overhead and turn right and left so that you can see if there is any flatness or any bulging in any part of your breast. After that, you start this is the inspection part of it. After that, you start palpation or feeling your breast. So for feeling your breast, you take pads of these 3 fingers of the opposite hand. So if you're palpating your left breast, you use your right hand. And if you're palpating your right breast, then you use your left hand. And with the flat of these finger pads, you feel your breast in a rotating manner. Now, people say there is an up-down method, there's a wedge method, there's a circular method. The point is that you should cover your entire breast, and you shouldn't miss any part of it. So you, whatever you prefer, whether you go pizza slice or you go up and down or circular, cover your entire breast, and at the end, press your nipple to see if there's any discharge. Put your hand inside your armpit while relaxing your shoulder. Feel if there's any lump there. Feel your neck to see if there's anything else. And you should try to do this in sitting position as well as lying down position. And also, when you're in the shower the same day, just put some soap on your hands and it glides really well, and you'll be able to feel any bumps and lumps better. If the first time, definitely what you should not do is feel your breast like this, because then all the ducts and the nodules, they will also feel like lumps. So just always feel against the chest wall with firm pressure. And if you find something in your first examination, you should wait and see if on the second breast examination also you're feeling something else, or if it's just a nodularity or thickening of breast parenchyma, it may just be normal for you. Learn your own breast. I think that's really important.
That's great. And so this, I think, sometimes becomes a concern for us that young girls generally come to doctors and say that, okay, we've generally come for a routine breast examination. So I think that's a good opportunity for us to kind of actually teach them how to do it on a routine basis, and then, encourage them as you've given a good schedule to kind of continue doing it in the times to come.
Definitely.
Right.
And I'm so sorry. Carry on. So self breast examination and also clinical breast examination should also start once a year at 30 years of age. And if the person is comfortable with the gynac, I'm sure, you can even go to your gynac or your GP and have that annual clinical breast examination.
In fact, that is what I was going to ask you, that what is, and Dr. Apurva already asked you, what is the role of the doctor in that? So I guess once in a year, you should also be going to whichever doctor you're comfortable with and get your examination done. And I'm so thankful to you for having pointed out that you're not supposed to be using, the pinching of the fingers, because most women tend to do that and they feel a young breast is more lumpy, and they tend to feel a lump and they get all scared and panicky then. Okay, my next question to you is, what is the difference between a sonomammogram and, of course, an X-ray mammogram? We're going to talk about the schedules and which age groups fit which one, but basically, what is the difference between the two?
So it's very, very, it's very, I don't know why, but it is very, very confused everywhere. I find even some radiology reports I see which say sonomammogram. And what
And they will give an X-ray picture.
image of the breast is a mammogram. If you do an ultrasound to image the breast, it's a sonomammogram. If you do an X-ray, which is what you regularly call a mammogram, where you put the breast between 2 plates and then take an image, that's an X-ray mammogram. And usually what is used for routine screening is an X-ray mammogram. And we can talk about that when we come to screening. That's fine.
Right. In fact, that's my next question. Now, there's so much of confusion, between, we've seen women who are less than 40 who undergo an X-ray mammography. I just yesterday when I put up my ask me kind of a thing, a friend of mine from Dubai wrote to me saying, but I'm above 45, I'm 44. And when she went to her, doctor and the X-ray unit, they said below 45, we will not do your X-ray mammography. So what is the cutoff? I mean, is it 40? Is it 45? Which women should be doing an ultrasound? Which women should be doing an X-ray mammography? Could you throw some light on that?
So there is two roles of a mammogram. One is a diagnostic mammogram and one is a screen. So if the patient has a symptom or a lump, there is no real cutoff. If I'm going to operate on a patient who's 30 years old for a breast cancer, I would still need a mammogram to make sure there is not something I am missing. Microcalcification or another smaller lump, which may only be visible on a mammogram. I should, as a doctor, if I'm conserving the breast, do a mammogram for any patient with breast cancer. But in routine screening, there are different schedules. You have different schedules in United Kingdom. United States has like 3 different schedules. One is from the ACR, one is from USPSTF. So overall, I think routine mammographical screening, which is X-ray mammogram, has shown benefit in mortality in women from 50 to 75 years of age, evidence-based. In nowadays, there is some newer information coming from the UK age study, which is saying that you should also do it for more than 40 years. But I think we need to look more into that. There needs to be more meta-analysis and it needs to be looked into more. But overall, I would say more than age of in a screening mammogram.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I just said somewhere in between.
Said in any imaging of the breast, you follow the BIRAD scoring, which is from the American College of Radiologists, and they tell you the likelihood of malignancy. So when they give you a lump, they will some very specific words they might use, which is a speculated radio opacity.
And then they will put it in bold. So even if they would put a normal study in bold, that kind of becomes concerning for the clients.
Well, yeah. So firstly, there are 2 things you should look for. They will give you a density. Your breast is very dense. You may be missing some lesion. So if you're feeling something on your clinical breast examination which is not showing up on a mammo, and because the breast is dense, you may choose to do any adjunct
procedures, investigating therapies, right?
Like an ultrasound.
Sure.
So that, and the other thing is they will give you a BIRAD score. So BIRAD score tells you how likely it is to be a tumor. 1 and 2 we can observe. 3 close follow-up. 4 and 5 BIRAD score should be biopsied.
So sorry,
I just want to kind of put one thing here. In case if we are doing, so you are recommending that for screening, we actually use, a regular mammogram and not a sonomammogram.
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
And the adjunct to a mammogram or to a clinical breast examination, especially in dense breasts or in younger women, if you're feeling something, you may go ahead with ultrasound first. But for routine screening imaging, you should do a mammogram. For a routine screening in general, I always recommend breast examination and clinical breast examination first and mammo second.
Okay,
great.
Is there a frequency at which the X-ray mammography should be done? So since we are talking about X-ray mammography, I will use the word X-ray mammography because it might just be a little confusing to a lot of viewers. How frequently should it be done as a screening?
So and
at what age?
Yeah, once in 2 years.
Once in 2 years. So till the age of 50, it would be once in 2 years?
50 to 75 or 74.
Okay. Apurva, your
Great.
question next.
We've already discussed as to how we will have to manage a lump. So
I think I disappeared in between at that time. Dr.
Sure.
Karishma, who are the women who are at a higher risk of having breast cancer? Are there certain women who would be at a higher risk? Can we identify like that?
Well, yes. So, couple of things. First, we need to understand the risk factors for breast cancer. Very classically, they're divided as modifiable, which is things you can change, and non-modifiable. So, starting with non-modifiable, you would have age and gender, which, as I said, increasing age increases your risk. Female gender increases your risk. Then other things like strong family history, especially more than one first degree relative, which is your mother, sibling, or whatever, your parent, sibling, or child having a breast cancer, especially at an early age, known BRCA mutations in the person, or other things like having receiving radiation for mantle radiation, especially before the age of 30 for lymphomas and such, and some benign diseases as well, which are biopsied, for example, LCIS or other atypical hyperplasias. The other thing, hormonally, lower younger age at menarche and late age at menopause, which basically an increase in the number of menstrual cycles you have also increases your risk. When you talk about modifiable risk factors, these are the number of children you have, the age at which you have your first child, which is very important, at how many months or years you breastfeed the child, and alcohol consumption.
So you would say longer breastfeeding would actually reduce the risk of breast cancer?
Yes, definitely. Studies have shown breastfeeding more than a year definitely reduces your risk. And a few of these factors, which we call as hormonal factors, are one of the main reasons why developing countries have a lower risk of breast cancer than the more developed countries. Because women here are more to have children at a younger age, to have more number of children, and to breastfeed them for longer. And as we are moving away from that lifestyle with westernization and more career orientation, which is all good, we all do it, but it also somewhat increases your risk for developing breast cancer. So the other thing that we can do, what we have control over, is the fact that you can be exercising about 3 hours a week, cutting down consumption of alcohol and smoking, and having good high fiber food. These are the things that we can change, and we should.
I think we have a couple of questions quickly. I think Sridhar has asked if we do follow our own breast cancer screening guidelines, or do we actually follow the ACOG guidelines?
So in general, for us, I mean, even while we are...
I think that's a concern we have otherwise also, because most of the studies and everything is, European ethnicity based, or it's based on studies that have been done in the West, and Asian ethnicity is completely different, and we have different risk factors per se, and different conditions that we need to be worried about. But unfortunately,
yeah, one of the main...
Go ahead, Karishma.
One of the main things for screening is that the disease should be a little more rampant, and that is why so when I'm saying that we should do mammography from the age of 50 to 74, it's not that it doesn't come with its drawbacks or cons. There will be overdiagnosis, there will be overtreatment, there will be some cancers that are more indolent that we will be diagnosis on this with the mammography. But it does come with you can identify cancers at an earlier stage, at least some of them, if not all. There will still be some very aggressive tumors which will show up in the interval between 2 mammograms. But I mean, understanding all of that, of course, this has to be a discussion with your patient, that it doesn't 100% of the times always catch your cancer at an earlier age. But women who come for a screening, it also increases the chance for the woman to be more breast aware. Screening, one of the side effects of screening is breast awareness, and the woman is also more likely to do her self breast examination and come for a clinical breast examinations. So I think
sure.
of mammogram is also important. The good side effects of mammogram is also important.
Sure, sure. As you had mentioned, in the previous conversation, Karishma, that there are certain risk factors that we have, and definitely one of them is family history of having breast cancer. Maybe we have to point out here that with respect to ovarian cancers also, the first degree relatives having ovarian cancers also will at some point have an increased risk of having breast cancer in the patients or women per se. So if we do have someone like that who comes to us, what can we tell them in order to change in their lifestyle that can reduce their risk of developing it? Is it possible that they can make some lifestyle changes which can reduce their risk of actually turning malignant?
So I think what is important is, firstly, we should know whether, of course, family is important, but we should know if they have a specific genetic mutation, because we have more experience with genetic mutations and we can give very directed suggestions or recommendations to the patient. Of course, for breast cancer and ovarian cancer, like if you talk about BRCA genes, and that is, I think, one of the most important genes for breast and ovarian malignancies.
I think thanks to Angelina Jolie, she made the world realize the presence of the gene BRCA and the existence of this word per se. Yes. But yeah, go ahead, Karishma.
So so that is what we can tell our patients is that obviously they are considered as higher risk patients, so their screening guidelines are different. They start MRI and mammogram annually from the age of 25 or 10 years prior to the first or the youngest malignancy diagnosed in their family. And the other thing that is important is for them to have their children early, breastfeed them, and by the late 30s we also recommend that they undergo a risk-reducing salpingo-oophorectomy, because I'm sure you know better than me is that ovary is not something you can survey
absolutely,
as breast is an outside, it is an
external organ, so it becomes easier.
Mammo and an MRI and keep a check and intervene early. But with an ovary, none of the screening methods per se have been all that effective, isn't it?
Dr. Karishma, I would like you to just slow down there, and because there have been a lot of questions which have come up regarding this particular thing. I have a family history. My mother or my mother's sister has had breast cancer. Specific questions being, when do I start doing anything specific? Do I need to do my BRCA gene investigation? So first question, does one need to do the BRCA gene thing?
Ideally, the index patient, that is the person who actually has the cancer, should be doing the BRCA testing. And okay. I think if you have a family history and are very concerned, then it is very important to meet a genetic counselor. They are very few and far between, but if you can find one, you should, and have a good counseling session to understand your individual risk based on who it was. Was it your mom or was it your mother's sister? Because your risk changes a lot. What was their age at which they had their first malignancy? Was it at an age younger than 40 years? Or were they 75 years of age, And then the other things that make a difference very often is the type of breast cancer they had. Certain types of breast cancer are more commonly seen in familial breast cancers. So it's an individual sort of question, but I would say that if it's a first degree relative, as I said, parent, sibling or child who had a breast cancer at a younger age, if they are willing, you should ask them to have themselves tested first. If they are negative, then you know that you are likely at an average risk or a slightly increased risk, because we don't know everything about all the genes. The genes that we know and we test, those mutations we know about, but there are many, many genes that we are unaware of. So we can't rule it out completely. You may still be at a slightly higher risk, but still, so your screening remains pretty much the same as an average risk woman. And the person who is the index patient should be the person who should be tested for the genetic mutation, not the rest.
And one of the questions which has come up is, I'm now pregnant, and I have a breast lump. What should I be doing about it? Dr. Karishma, you and I have been speaking about a particular patient of mine as well, who had the same problems. Could you just throw a little bit of a light regarding this whole thing?
So, any sort of a breast tumor can come up when you're pregnant because with the assumption that you're young because you're pregnant, I would say that it is unlikely that it is a cancer. And fibroadenomas also are known to sometimes grow with the hormones related to pregnancy, and it might be that, but it is always worth checking out. So please meet your physician, let them examine you, and let at least get, you can't do an X-ray mammogram when you're pregnant, but they may suggest that you have an ultrasound, and if needed, even a biopsy can be done. And be rest assured that there are treatment at whatever trimester you're at. Even if it is cancer, it is important to start the treatment. And at different trimesters, different parts of breast cancer treatment can be started and done. So with keeping the safety of the mother and the child in mind.
Right. Apurva?
I think we have another question from Sridhar regarding use of COCs, that is combined oral contraceptive pills, in reducing the risk, and also any specific comment on what is the kind of innerwear that women should wear, which can either increase or reduce the risk of, does wearing innerwear and brasseries, do they increase the risk? Because there is a concern amongst women that, in case if you kind of wear it all along, you have a higher risk of cancer.
I would say they are mostly media generated, these concerns, and any kind of breast support that you wear, whatever brassiere, as long as it's comfortable for you, you can wear it. Yes, ideally, mainly for comfort, you should remove it at night. And if you have a breast pain, then or mastalgia, especially cyclical mastalgia, then it's better to wear something with firm support like a sports bra or a minimizer style bra, rather than wearing an underwire bra. That is, but what type of bra you wear and how long you wear it for is not shown to be related to any kind of cancer till now. And
what about the use of oral contraceptive pills?
So the thing with oral contraceptives, I think they reduce gynecological cancer.
Yes, absolutely.
Cancer risk. So long-term use, I would say more than 5 years use of oral contraceptive pills definitely increases your breast cancer risk. However, said and done, once you stop that, your risk also comes down to baseline after 5 years of not using it. So use it if you must, but try to do it in shorter duration. Similarly, for even hormone replacement therapy, some women have very severe menopausal symptoms. So I don't say that, no, you can never use hormonal replacement therapies. Use HRT, but use them as limited as possible. Definitely don't use them for more than a year. And same for OCPs, use them, but don't use them continuously for more than 5 years.
I think Pooja has asked a question regarding use of underwire bra. Is it safe? I think, yeah, it's safe for us to say it is safe. And Vasu also has asked that maternal grandmom has had breast CA, and so should we all screen? I think you've already touched on this topic. Ideally, we should get your grandmom screened for the BRCA gene, and in case if she has had it at an older age, it's unlikely. Yeah, it's unlikely that it's because of this thing.
It is unlikely. Only 5 to 10% of all breast cancers are actually genetically linked. So there is a genetic link, but it is not pervasive. So if you do have a breast lump, which does turn out to be cancer, 90% of the time, it is not going to be genetically related.
Sure.
Right. How fatal is breast cancer? I mean, one, obviously, when we hear the word cancer, we are very scared about it. And of course, if you have breast cancer, and we've heard so many horrible stories about it, is breast cancer really that fatal? Always.
Breast cancer is all about the stage, and that is why we push for screening, be it cell breast examination or clinical breast examination, is that early detection saves lives. And this may have been said over and over 100 million times, but it remains true. And that is why it is so important to be diagnosed early. From something like upwards of 95% 5-year survival rate with an early breast cancer to less than 50% with later stages or locally advanced breast cancers. So it is all about when it is diagnosed, and that is why, you know, in Western countries you have a 1 in 5 or 6 women dying of breast cancer, and in India it is 1 in 2 out of 3, and that is mainly because of the stages at which they come. Even now, I mean, now of course I think the awareness has increased a little, and we do have women with smaller lumps, painless lumps also coming, but even then we do have fairly educated women coming with big ulcers, with big lumps on the breast. So it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's a body part. You have a lump in it, show it to a doctor. I mean, doctors are very immune to body parts, I would say. So there's nothing to be embarrassed about. If you have a cough, you go to a doctor. So if you have any other symptoms, also you go to a doctor and just have it checked out. You know, and 8 out of 10, nothing. But 2 out of 10, let's study.
Sure.
One more thing, of course, I put it up on my story, but still, I would like you to shed some light on it. When we talk about breast cancer, we never talk about men because we associate that with women only. How true is that? Would you like to shed some light on that or any advice?
I think that is the stereotype aspect what we are talking about. I think women per se probably will have lesser, embarrassment to kind of really come down and say that they have a lump on the breast as compared to, men really going up to anyone and saying that.
Breast unit, especially, sitting there with 50 women and they'll be wondering. I know it's embarrassing, but the thing with men is that one thing is that out of 100, one breast cancer will be in a man, which is 1% of all breast cancers is seen in men. Because they have such little breast parenchyma. When the breast tumor grows, it very often it involves the skin or the underlying muscle. So because they are also a little bit don't want to come forward with this breast problem, they come in a little bit later stage of the disease. So they're more likely to have a locally advanced breast cancer, or also their cancers grow a little bit quickly to the skin because there is less tissue between for the tumor to grow into. Having said that, men actually age and stage match. They have a little bit of a worse prognosis than women. So their symptoms are pretty much the same. They will have a lump. They very often they have a skin ulcer or a wound, nipple discharge or nipple ulcers. And even though the incidence is very little and we don't suggest any type of screening in men, I think it is important for men to be aware of these symptoms and to come forward.
Sure. Especially in case if they are having any symptoms, they definitely need to be vocal about it.
Definitely.
Yes, Rajiv.
Someone has asked a question saying that, does breast size increase or decrease the risk of breast cancer? In the sense, do bigger breasts have more risk of breast cancer? And is there any truth in that?
No, there is no, I mean, it is not breast size related. I think if you have a larger breast, because of the amount of parenchyma and fat, you may miss a smaller lesion when you're...
Yes. Screening probably becomes a little bit of a concern as compared to the actual increase in risk for the tissue in itself.
Definitely.
Right.
So,
Dr. Karishma, sorry, please carry on.
I just said otherwise not related. Please.
A question has come up again. Of course, you've answered this before, but because we have another 5-10 minutes time. So I have fibroadenoma in my left breast a few years ago, and I was told it was benign. Do I need to do something about it? What would you suggest? Because this is the most commonly recurring question, I thought you just might want to answer her directly again.
Right. So I think she's 31 years old, which is a very common age for a fibroadenoma. So in all likelihood, it is a fibroadenoma. You don't need to really worry about it if it has stayed the same in size. However, if it's growing in size and in general, if it is a slightly larger tumor, say it's bigger than about 2 or 3 centimeters, if you're feeling that, or it is growing in size, then I think it is best to approach a doctor. And the other thing that you can do if it's a slightly bigger lump is you can also keep it under a watch. You can do an ultrasound once a year to see if it's growing or not, and see a doctor once a year. Don't just ignore it, that leave it there and forget about it. You should show it to a breast surgeon or a surgery year and just have a clinical breast examination. In any case, at 30, we would suggest that with the fibroad all the more.
I think Praju has asked a question which we've already taken up before, that yes, breastfeeding does reduce the risk of breast cancer, especially if you do exclusive breastfeeding for about a year, you will be significantly reducing the risk of breast cancer. So reason and motivation for you to go ahead and continue breastfeeding.
Another question which is common is, does gynecomastia, that is, bigger breasts in the male, increase the risk of breast cancer in the males? Is there any truth in that?
Well, for the most part, no. It is almost negligible, this relationship which is supposedly there, and most gynecomastias are not related to breast cancer. But you can't, when two things develop simultaneously, that may be. But gynecomastia does not cause breast cancer.
Right. I think one of the questions which has come to me again is, are there specialized centers? And the person, of course, asked about Kolkata. That are there any specialized centers where you can go for breast care and breast examination, or who are specifically catering to such things in Kolkata? And what should you do if you require any help? I think Dr. Karishma has already spoken about that. You go to your health professional, whoever, wherever they are. Does not have to be a specialized center. And I'm sure, Dr. Karishma, you're going to be flooded with requests for online in our life, because I'm sure there are a lot of people who would want to consult you as well. Dr. Apurva, do you have any questions? I think I'm done with my...
I think we've made things very clear, and I think I have learned a lot of new information today through this live. So yeah, this has definitely been a great session, Karishma.
Thank you.
Thank
Dr. Apurva,
So I think I will...
Thanking Dr.
Yes,
Karishma for this live. Yes, Apurva, go on.
Absolutely. I just wanted to take a screenshot, but you're very hazy, Rajiv.
Sorry.
And I'm going to post the same picture, and you can't say anything. Okay, smile, everybody.
Everyone's extremely hazy.
Thank you, Dr. Karishma. Thank you for being here, and thank you for providing so much of information. I will end this live now, and it will be available on my IGTV and to be shared by everyone else as well. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you so much, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.